All right, are we ready, Jonathan?
Yes, we are.
All right. Welcome to the 2021 Virtual Stowe Candidates Night, hosted by the Stowe Independent and Stowe TV. I'm Cyndy Bremer. And hold on one second, we're having a tech difficulty here. Hold on one second. My fault. Okay, sorry, that was my fault. I'm here with Jonathan Daisy from Stowe TV, and he is lending his technical expertise to us so that I don't turn anyone into a cat. Jonathan, take it away.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Daisy, Director of Stowe TV. This will be our first collaboration together with the Independent and Stowe TV, and we hope that you find it informative and that it helps you to better know the candidates that you're hearing from this evening. This is new to us, so I hope you will forgive any technical glitches we might have. You are allowed to post questions to Facebook or YouTube, and we will make every attempt to address them. But please understand if we're not able to address your questions, and we will do our best to follow up in the next week's edition of The Independent. We hope that after tonight, you will have a feel for the candidates and how they may perform in the office for which they wish to serve. Questions will be monitored. Please keep them short and have them address only issues related to the office for which they are running. We can remove people from the chat, and we will if we think it's necessary to stay on track. We thank all the candidates for their time and willingness to participate, and especially their willingness to serve the town of Stowe. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. The format for tonight's event is pretty simple. The candidates will appear in groups. They'll give their introductions. We will have questions that have been submitted that they will answer, and then we will open it up to the audience for questions, live questions. Please do hold your questions until the candidates that you are looking to ask questions of are actually on screen. Please use the chat in both Facebook Live and YouTube. If you could use that chat only to ask questions, we would appreciate it. If you did not use it to make, to have private conversations or make comments, we just want to be able to clearly see the questions, and that's only going to happen if there's no other discussion going on in there. The candidates will appear in the following order. First, the uncontested races. That includes the library trustees, the assessors, the school committee, the selectmen, and finally we'll move to the only contested race in this year's election, which is for planning board. And Marcia Rising, who is the incumbent running for the Board of Health, was not able to make it tonight. She would have otherwise been here. After the candidates have spoken and we're through the question and answer periods, Town Clerk Linda Hathaway will talk about the voting process and the voting options for this year's town election, which is kind of a combo because of the pandemic and how all of that's happened before. I will let Linda handle that. So next up, the first candidates. These are for the Randall Library Trustees position, and we welcome incumbent Maureen Busch and newcomer Maura Sieller. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
All right, Maureen, we're going to have you speak first. You'll do your introduction, and then Maura, we'll take it from there. And then I have a few pre-submitted questions, and then we'll open up questions to the audience. Okay, Maureen, thank you.
Good evening. As introduced, I am Maureen Busch, and I'm running for re-election to the Randall Library Board of Trustees. I believe that a strong local library is as important today as ever. Libraries play a valuable role in our pursuit of lifelong learning. Libraries afford all of us the opportunity to continue to grow and learn and to nurture a lifelong enjoyment of books and reading. Libraries can expose us to a wide range of ideas and perspectives on just about any subject we might be interested in exploring. A knowledgeable staff can help guide us as we explore those subjects. As we move through the 21st century and experience the changes and advances in the ways we learn and acquire information, the library will have to evolve and adapt to those changes. Randall Library's quick shift to curbside pickups and online program offerings during the pandemic shutdown demonstrated the flexibility needed to adapt to the changing needs of our community. I am excited to be a part of those changes and look forward to supporting Randall Library as it grows and changes to continue to meet our changing needs for information. The trustees play an important role supporting the library and its staff in that mission to continue to provide opportunities for learning. On a personal note, my husband and I have lived in Stowe for over 30 years and raised our 3 children here. I've served on a number of committees and boards over the years, including being a parent representative on all 3 school councils, Pompo Center, Hale, and Neshoba Regional, as well as being a representative on Neshoba Regional School Committee. All those experiences have been a great opportunity to view how the town works and how boards work, and I look forward to continuing to support the town. I hope I can count on your support on Election Day. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. All right, Maura.
Hi, I'm Maura Sieller, and I'm running for library trustee. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I think that I would be deserving of your vote. I live in the Gleasondale area with my 2 young daughters and my husband. We moved to Stowe in 2018, and since then I've served on the Gleasondale Steering Committee. I became a SAPIN member. I'm a co-clerk in NASJA, and I'm a reporter with the Stowe and Bolton Independent. I'm also a licensed 5 through 12 English teacher, and I've worked as a teacher's aide and paraprofessional in the Newton and Waltham public schools. I'm now a stay-at-home mom. My hope is to represent young families with young kids, and to bring my experience as an educator to the trustee position. I feel very strongly that libraries are an important resource for any community. Under normal circumstances, they serve as a place for people to gather together, have access to resources they otherwise would not, and lean on the librarians for their expertise. Before COVID, our family spent a lot of time at the Randall and other local libraries for story time, special events, and just reading books and socializing. Well, we are very much looking forward to getting back to that lifestyle. It's also very important to me that all agencies of our town take a step back to consider how we can support marginalized groups of people and provide resources for them. I plan to take this perspective into the trustee position, and I would also like to be someone everyone feels like they can come to with ideas and suggestions for how we can best support the efforts of the library.
All right, thank you, Maura. Now for a couple of questions. Question 1, and we'll start with Maureen. Maura, after Maureen's done, same question will go to you. The Randall Library will be undergoing renovations with planning currently underway. Where do you see yourself fitting into that process, and what would you like to see as the end result of the project?
Well, all of the trustees will support whatever project we have, although we entrusted a building committee to steer the process. At the end of the day, I hope that we have a more functional building that is able to grow and adapt to the changing needs and changing technology. For example, our current library was built, even the newer part was built in the 70s, and we just didn't have the electronics even when it was built that we do now. So we need to be able to adapt to where life is now and where it's going, as opposed to where it was 50 years ago.
Right, thank you, Maureen. Maura, do you want me to read the question again?
No, that's okay. So I actually put in to be on the library renovation committee, and I knew the 2 other people who put in for it, and I knew that they would be so great on the committee. So I decided to withdraw my application, and I figured something else would come along for me later, which is why I decided to run for library trustee. So I'm very excited about the library renovation project, and I know that they have a great committee supporting them. And to me, I think the library staff are going to be the ones who are best going to understand what the space should be used for, how it should be renovated to serve the community. And I think Bolton, for example, did a really great job renovating their library, and I'm hoping to communicate with somebody who I know is very involved in that project to get some feedback from him and to get his kind of like hindsight on that project. So I'm just hoping that I can be like a good resource for that already existing committee. And I know in the end it's going to be really beautiful, and it's such an important space for the town. So I'm really excited to see the final product.
Great, thank you. Okay, and the next question. The Board of Trustees is an established group working together to further the goals of the library. How do you see yourself fitting into that group? Maura, we'll take you first.
Sure. Well, I'll be the newbie. So I think I have a lot to learn, but I'm excited because, like I said, my family spent so much time at the library that I felt like this was a really good opportunity to give back in a way. So I think I'm pretty easy to get along with, and I'm someone who, like, once I commit to something, I fully commit. So I'm really excited to be a part of this group and to support the library. And once COVID's over, to be in there all the time. And I feel like when you're in there and you're talking to staff and people who use the library, that's how you get the best feedback. So I'm just really excited to be part of this group.
Great. Maureen, same question?
Could you run it by me again?
Absolutely. The Board of Trustees is an established group working together to further the goals of the library. How do you see yourself fitting into the group? Obviously, you're already there, so.
Considering all viewpoints, no matter what we're doing within the library, different people will want different things and will have different priorities, and it's our job to consider all of them and incorporate them as best we can. If you have two conflicting desires, you can't give everybody everything, but you can try to mitigate the disappointment for the things you can't give one group or another, and work to give them as much as you can give. So I see myself being a part of that process.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I'm looking to see, I don't see at this point, I'm not seeing any questions. What I need to do, hang on, let me just, let's see. Okay, I don't see any questions coming up. So I think we are all set. And thank you very much, both of you, for coming in tonight and for stepping up and taking your time and energy to help the town out. It's all of the candidates. I admire all of you. So thank you. All right, next up will be the Board of Assessors.
Am I on?
You're on, Lenny. How are you? Good. Unfortunately, it appears that Saji Johnson, who is a write-in candidate, did not make tonight's event. Unfortunately, he had been at our rehearsal a week ago, so I'm not sure what happened. I hadn't heard from him. So unfortunately, we won't have both of you, but we'll have you, Len.
Okay.
So here is Len Golder. He is running for the remainder of an expiring 3-year term. Len is actually, well, without Saji, Len, you're on. Here's your introduction.
Thank you, Cyndy. I'm Len Golder. I've spent most of the 30 years that I've lived in Stowe serving and volunteering on several boards. And my objective has always been to do whatever I can to help the town in whatever board or way that would be helpful. Also, of course, the money's great. Yeah, doesn't pay anything, but that's okay. Now, under our town charter, you can run for as many elected positions as you wish, but you can only serve on one. I'm on the ballot now for 2 positions. One of the assessor positions, and also for re-election to the planning board, in which I've served for the past 15 years. My preference honestly, would be to be reelected to the planning board for reasons which I'll go into when we get to that section. But if the voters don't see it that way, I'm certainly happy to serve as an assessor. If nobody were to run for this position, what would happen is somebody would probably get elected with like 3 or 4 write-in votes, and that nobody even that had not campaigned, nobody knew what they had to offer or what they would do. In this situation, if I'm elected and don't serve, then the assessors and the selectmen can appoint somebody who will step forward. And I think that overall is a better way to do this, rather than just have a blank position and just have 3 or 4 write-ins elect somebody. So that's why I stepped forward for the assessor position. If I serve on the assessor position, there are 2 main responsibilities that I feel I can fill. One is the assessors review the assessment plan that's done by an outside counseling firm and review it and then approve it. The second thing, and maybe the more input that they have, is in hearing tax abatement hearings. I've done a lot of hearings in my life. As an attorney practicing for 40 years, I've done hearings for arbitration for the New York Stock Exchange, for the Commonwealth on the Medical Malpractice Tribunal Committee, and also in town government on the Planning Board and Zoning Board, where we have hearings and I participate. So I have the experience. As I say, I prefer to stay on the Planning Board, but if that doesn't happen, I'm certainly happy to serve on the Board of Assessors.
Okay, thank you, Lenny. The one question I have for Board of Assessors is the assessors are tasked with assigning value to all property in the community at full and fair cash value or market value as outlined in state laws. How will you approach the position to ensure that you will be fair and equitable in your assessments?
Well, first, in reviewing what the outside consulting firm does in terms of their assessment, I'd review it in terms of what's going on in terms of the marketplace. To me, that's number one. That's the most important thing, because houses that are sold tell you the real value. And also, in terms of the overall picture, looking at houses in terms of comparable value and making sure that they are comparable. Obviously, you don't compare a McMansion to a ranch, but you want to make sure that you're getting it right, and I want to be sure that that happens. The other part of it, as I mentioned, is abatements. When people file for an abatement and they're saying that, no, my property is not the value that it was assessed at, to look at that, and again, look at the overall assessment in the town in terms of sales and comparable values, and then look at the individual home and look at it in relation to other houses that sold or were assessed that were comparable.
All right. Thank you, Lenny. I'll look. I don't see any live questions yet. Let me just double check that I'm in the right spot. Yep. No comments. No comments. Okay. I think you're all set. Thank you so much. And next up will be school committee candidate Karen Devine. Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Karen Devine is the only candidate for the open position of Neshoba Regional School Committee representative. And so here's your moment to shine, Karen, and tell us all about you.
Thank you. I'm Karen Devine, and I'm running for the open seat on the Neshoba Regional School Committee. And thank you to the Stowe Independent and Stowe TV for this opportunity. I've lived in town for 18 years with my husband and my 2 sons. Professionally, I've worked in special education for 27 years. I've taught from integrated preschool all the way up to high school and beyond. Currently, I'm a special education team chair in a nearby district. Over my career, I've participated in many opportunities that I think lend themselves well to the role of a school committee member, including working groups and hiring committees. This past summer, I was a parent representative on the Neshoba Superintendent's Reopening Committee and a teacher representative on the reopening committee in my own district. I don't plan to enter the role of school committee member with a specific agenda of my own. However, I know that there are many important tasks ahead of our district. Of course, continuing to navigate the pandemic is in the forefront of everyone's mind. We also have the hiring and introduction of a new superintendent and the high school building project in our sites. Along with those issues, there are topics that all school districts have to grapple with in order to thrive, including determining best practices in curriculum, assessment, special education, the mental health needs of our students, the effective and balanced use of technology in the classroom. As a school committee member, I intend to listen and learn from a variety of voices in our community, both loud and soft voices, and then use what I learned to make informed decisions with the best interest of the students as the center of my focus. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. I have a couple of questions. Many voters have a strong stake in the quality of the Neshoba schools, from parents to property owners. How will you represent the different groups that may have opposing opinions on a specific subject?
Well, I think by really taking the time to try to listen to a wide range of voices in the community, that it's not just people who have students, children currently in the district, but it's people who live in town who don't have children yet. It's people who live in town who have no children or grown children, and really trying to fold in all of those voices and take, sorry, my phone's gonna go off, and take that information and pull it together in the most organized way that I can, and then use that to make the best decisions that I can. Obviously, going into this role, there's a lot to learn. So really being able to listen and have open discussions with people. And I also really try to keep the big picture in mind, because what's best for our school district is what's also best for our community as a whole.
Great, thank you. All right, and next question. How do you envision including Stowe residents in the high school building project?
Stowe residents in meaning Stowe residents that have children that will be there eventually, or Stowe residents in general?
I believe the question was in general. It didn't specify, so let's just assume it means in general, just that the Stowe population has,
Sure.
You know, how do you going to ensure their role in it?
Well, I think I'm going to have a lot to learn about the whole building project process. I mean, we're just entered this new phase. So I think we're going to have opportunities to let those voices be heard. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to do some of that in person and have opportunities where we can invite people from town to sit down with the representatives from Stowe and have their opinions heard and let them ask their questions. I think the school committee has done a pretty good job so far of putting out the information they have on the building project. And I think we would have to keep that up and make sure it's publicized, it's available to everyone, and then give people the opportunity to, whether it's through email or through, personal contact, be able to express their views so we can then take those views and bring them back to the committee.
Great, thank you. Okay, and we do have a question from the audience. As a teacher, what do you see as the most important attribute of our next superintendent?
It's really hard to pick just one. I think I'm going to say it's one of the most important attributes of a superintendent, in my opinion, is somebody who is able to be very honest and transparent with what's going on. That doesn't mean that they can just tell us every bit of information whenever we want to hear it, because there's a lot of things that go on that have to be put into place. It's complicated. There's a lot of things at play there that superintendents have to grapple with. But as soon as they're able to be transparent and say, this is where we are, but also at times be able to say, I don't have that information yet. This is what I do have, and this is when I think I'll have what you're looking for, I think can go a long way in reassuring people that that a superintendent has the best interests of the district in mind.
All right, great. Thank you, Karen. I don't see any other questions, so we will move on to the next set of candidates.
Thanks.
And that will be the Board of Selectmen, incumbent Ellen Sturgis, and newcomer Zack Burns. Hello.
Hey, Cyndy. Hey, Zack. Hang on.
All right, you're both on and you can hear.
We can hear you.
All right. Introducing both of you, and Ellen being the incumbent, we will allow Ellen to speak first.
All right, thank you, Cyndy, and thank you, Jonathan. This is a great format. I actually am really grateful for you all taking this on. So I hate to start out by saying that I've lived in Stowe for 30 years or more, because I'm not really running as a townie, and I'm not running because I think I know what's best for us. And it's actually quite the opposite. I want to do all I can to encourage new volunteers to join committees and boards, especially those who historically felt they weren't welcome. All can help us lead us through this next period of growth and uncertainty. My strategy is to deepen our newfound commitment to transparency, which was great to hear Karen just mention. Our new town administrator has shed light on many parts of town government in her short time here. We're having a very open discussion about the budget, for example, and she's highlighting deficiencies in policies and staffing, which, when corrected, will make us all more efficient and better served. I've already encouraged input into issues facing the town, and though sometimes it's hard to hear, I've pushed back when staff or board members don't have answers I think should be available before they ask the town for more money. My new favorite suggestion, learned from a neighbor, is to solve the dog poop problem by raising dog license fees to create a fund to hire a private hauler to go to Town Forest and Delaney every week. Luckily, I believe our town administrator and our future select board are ready to be problem solvers and will welcome, if not always approve, of new and creative solutions. Other ideas can be shared directly at select board meetings. I think a great benefit of the Zoom meeting is that attendance is way up at our meetings. In terms of experience, I've been a nonprofit administrator with a focus on finance and now run my own consulting business for nonprofits. In Stowe, I've previously served on the Neshoba Regional School Committee. I had a term on the select board about 10 years ago, as well as this just last year. I've also volunteered as chair of the Library Friends Committee, the Second Century Fund. I coordinated the Stowe Bloodmobile for several years, and I chaired the School Building Task Force and co-chaired the Center School Building Committee. When we first moved to town, there were those who encouraged me to get involved, and now it's my turn. So I look forward to serving on the select board and to seeing all of you at an upcoming meeting.
Thank you, Ellen. All right, and up next is Zack Burns.
Thank you, Cyndy and Jonathan, for hosting this fantastic event. And Ellen, it's also great to see you again. My name's Zack Burns, and I live at the old Gates Whitney homestead with my husband. I greatly enjoyed volunteering for the town, especially in hiring the new police chief and currently on the finance committee. I've really enjoyed getting to know each and every one of you that I've spoken to over the last many months. Your concerns, your hopes, and your wishes for our town have really been taken to heart. I hear you, and I want to make sure that the town represents you. I also want to say thank you for all of the support and encouragement so many of you have given me. I'm running for the Stowe Select Board to help build a united strategic plan of our collective future with fresh energy and a new perspective. I believe the most important aspect of any plan is that Stowe's residents and all of its residents have continuous opportunities to participate and contribute. So I promise to center opportunities for comment and ensure that any plan builds on the amazing collective expertise and talents of so many of our neighbors and friends. And I've also heard from so many of you that you want to know your local government is working strategically for you. I've heard that you believe we need to have select board goals, town administrator goals, and goals for each of our other boards. I couldn't agree more. And finally, I've heard from so many of you that you want our town to do the right thing, especially with regards to climate change and police reform. I agree that our future must include considerations of our carbon footprint and must include updated policies regarding policing, which I think our new police chief is doing a fantastic job at doing. So if you haven't had a chance to meet yet, I hope we do so really soon. If you see a Jeep Gladiator Mojave driving around town, that's likely me. Don't hesitate to stop me and say hi. And so I humbly ask, for your vote on May 8th or by mail, and I look forward to answering your questions tonight or any other time you may have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Zack. All right, and we have a couple of questions. We actually have more than a couple of questions. First question, and we'll start with Ellen. What do you see as the priorities for the Board of Selectmen in the upcoming years?
Well, I think this first year, Denise has gotten through a lot, at least Dombrowski, our new town administrator, but we all agree that our town charter and our bylaws really need to be reviewed. We're well behind the scheduled review of those. Partly because I don't think they've really, especially the charter has not really been reviewed since it was passed, which was about 28 years ago. So they just need some updating. But I think within that, it's talking about the strategic plan and that the master plan that we again, have postponed updating for a while. We used a lot of lingo in the last round that I think means really different things to different people. For example, we talk about the rural character of Stowe, and I think that's a code word for let's keep the door closed to new people in town. So I think it's, especially at this moment, I think that we have a great opportunity to have a really good, solid and honest conversation about where we want Stowe to go in the next 5 to 10 years, particularly.
Great, thank you. Zack, same question. Do you need me to read it again?
No, I'm fine, thank you. I think the question itself is where we have to start, which is what are the priorities of Stowe? I think that we haven't updated, as Ellen suggested, the strategic plan and the master plan to the point where we actually can aid in the policy making of our boards around town and aid in the future of our town. I think the priority in the next year or two, especially with the Commonwealth passing police reform, is having the opportunity to truly engage in a conversation regarding what our policies look like. And I think that this process has already started well and is going to continue well. But I think from there, we have to be moving into other important considerations. How do we want to evaluate our town website, and how do we want to move that forward? I think that's absolutely a critical step. Is I know sometimes it's difficult, and I've heard from so many of you that it's difficult to access a link to join a meeting. And I think that we have to start to resolve that and ensure information is out there. And so I want to start with the question, which is that we need to start to have strategic sessions of the select board to actually start to address what are the top concerns in town, and make sure that we are first engaging the residents of Stowe before putting our own opinions on the table, because I think that the select board should be operating as a collector of all information to develop these priorities and not just acting as single agents.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Zack this time. Question came in. Do you support changing the name from Board of Selectmen to Select Board?
I don't think this is going to be a controversial one between Ellen and I. As you can see, it does say Select Board. I believe this is part of doing the right thing. I think the right thing is ensuring that all of our people in Stowe and all of our children understand the future and the potential that they can have. I think that a majority of the towns around us have done it. It is not, to me, a big deal. I think we can respect the historical nature of our town while understanding that we're doing the right thing to move our town forward. And I think this name is one of those opportunities for us to show that we know how to do the right thing as a town.
Thanks, Zack. And Ellen?
Yeah, I would just add that, some people say, well, it's because, we had a majority women board. It's like, no, that's not why. We actually have had majority women boards in the past. Really, it is, as Zack said, it's about being inclusive and helping everyone to feel like they could be here too, and that it's a board that's welcome to everybody. So, if we could be any more generic, there's been some great humorous stories or suggestions, but I think Select Board is just clear enough that this is a board that anybody can sit on.
Terrific. Thanks. All right. Ellen, this will go to you first. COVID forced towns to get creative with how business gets done. Talking about virtual meetings that have seen more participation, registering your dog online, your burn permit can now be done online. What are your ideas to modernize the town processes?
Well, I think, one of the things Denise, again, started doing almost as soon as she arrived was setting up some of these automatic or online options for paying for fees, paying, to get your license, whatever. And I think that's, some had been available in the past, but there's more and more we could be doing that way. Zack mentioned the website. I think we have some ways to go to improve our ways that we can communicate and post meetings and make it more accessible for everyone. I know even I can't get, the information I want off the website for certain committees that just don't want to use it. And I think we have to get behind our town administrator, but also, put our own pressure to bear on all the committees to say, no, this is part of your job, is to make sure that the town knows when you're meeting, what your agenda is, and who's on your board. I guess, I think that's really, those are the key things. I do feel like there's been a real benefit, as I mentioned in my opening statement, around having Zoom meetings. It means a lot of people who, before you could watch on Stowe TV, luckily, it was televised, but there wasn't the interaction. And now people can interact from their homes, or actually even if they're on vacation. And I think that that's really important. And I really hope that we continue that, because I think it's a key part of how our sort of small town government works. You know, it involves people. It requires people to be knowing what's going on and that we can hear from them. And so I hope that we'll continue that kind of that, you know, still maybe hopefully we'll be able to have some people in person again, but I think to keep that option open for people, is really important. Great,
thank you. Zack, same question.
I think this is a fantastic question, and I think I know who may have submitted it. So I appreciate that. The town website first needs to be done, but I think with the town website, what we're talking about is ensuring that information access is available, whether it's policies of a certain department, minutes from meetings. I think that's the first step. Second is social media. We have to be talking about social media as we move forward as a town. It is one of the best ways to communicate. I know that on Twitter, I follow Hudson Light and Power, and I think everyone follows it because you know that there's a power outage before I think anything else happens, because you're able to follow it on social media. And it's also a great way for us to engage younger folk in town and sort of receive additional feedback. And the third is something Ellen sort of hinted on as well, which is the virtual meeting aspect. I've absolutely loved this. I've watched bills in other states sort of be put forward about how we can maintain virtual meetings alongside in-person meetings when we can go back to them. And I think that some sort of blended ability for increased access is everything that we need to be doing. Because again, this is about you having the ability to step in and say, I want to voice up here. I have an idea here. I think that we could maybe strategically think about this differently. I want to voice up. And I think that we have to be providing platforms and using technology to our advantage as a select board in order to ensure that we're getting all that information to build the best policy that we can build with all of our collective ideas and expertise.
All right, great. Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Zack. This was a pre-submitted question, and it starts with a premise that there is a disconnect between the planning board, the building commissioner and zoning enforcement, and the Board of Health. In addition, the lack of consistent, timely enforcement of bylaws and special permits results in undue challenges for the planning board. The question they pose is, how might you put policy in place that provides a better partnership of the three entities? And this was specifically for the Board of Selectmen.
Sure. I think that's all about communication. I think that it's about communication and a plan. Again, this is where I think that we have to be taking our town collectively in this master plan and ensuring that we're able to really push forward what that looks like. But this is a difficult question. And the answer is that I don't think there's an easy answer to this. I think what this means is that we need to be able to first voice up that there's an issue. Second, we need to ensure that our employees in town who are part of these boards and are connecting through are ensuring that concerns are being heard. And third, these are also elected boards. And at the end of the day, if there are issues, this is where your voice matters too. Showing up to the board and explaining that there may be some miscommunication or that there may be some gaps is absolutely critical. We can only solve problems when you raise them. So I appreciate this question. I hear this question. I'm going to take notes and I'm going to see what we can do afterwards. I think that process is what I can present to you right now. And that is how we can go about trying to find a solution. I'm solution oriented. And at the end of the day, I hope that whoever wrote this question, please feel free to reach out, burnsforstow@gmail.com. I want to talk with you about this and hear about this more. Thank you.
Thanks, Zack. Ellen, same question. Do you want me to read it again?
It was the planning board, the building department, and Board of Health. Is that right?
Planning board, the building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer.
Oh, okay.
And the Board of Health. So right. 3 entities.
Yeah. Well, I think what this highlights is that in the past, our staff and our boards and committees were not given a lot of direction. We're not brought together to be thinking sort of in the same direction. They were really left to their own devices. And, you know, many great things have happened as a result or in spite of lack of support. You know, it's not like we haven't been doing a lot of things, but I think what's often this kind of thing, what it says to me is that it's part of that people just going off and doing what they thought was the right thing, but it didn't really coordinate with, what zoning was doing, or in this case, Board of Health. I think we need to, it goes back to two things to me: leadership by the Board of Selectmen, that we need to be saying, okay, if there's disconnects between committees, get you in this, come to the select board meeting. Let's have a conversation about, like, where did it start? Where did it's coming up? Where is the tension now? But also, I think it's about the sort of the structure of how do we support our staff and how do we support our committees. And I think again, I can't say enough about our new town administrator. I think she's, in one of the things she instituted pretty quickly was senior management meetings. And some of these managers have never met together before. They've never had a chance to talk across the table to find out what are they working on and how can they support each other. And it's changed the nature of town hall dramatically already. And that's been in 7 months. So I think, but the select board, for me, I think also the select board has many years ago sort of relinquished their leadership role to the town administrator, who wasn't a particularly strong leader. And so I think that's what I want. I want Denise to do what she is, written, is in her job description and in the charter for her to do. But I think the select board need to take that leadership on the vision piece, on like saying, hey, everybody, we need to get back in the same room, talk about where are we going, what are our priorities, whether it's, in the case of these groups, if planning board has a vision for, say, for Lower Village, and it conflicts with some of the concerns the Board of Health has, well, okay, let's work it out. Like, come into the meeting. And there's, we do have a model when Chapter 61 land comes available. We have what's called a sort of, I can't remember, it's a joint boards meeting, essentially. It's like an emergency meeting where the relevant committees heads come into a meeting with the select board, and they talk through, do we want to go for this? Do we want to take the right of first refusal of that piece of property? That's a great model that we should use a lot more often. I think there's some boards right now that are having a lot of problems, and I think the select board should take an interest in it. It doesn't matter that we're not elected to that board, but we are the collective chief executive of the town, and you would always expect the CEO of an organization to be concerned about any department that's not working well. So I think that's, to me, this is an example of how we can take some leadership and help to really address the challenges out there that are from years of neglect, is what I would call it, frankly.
Thank you. Thank you both. And one more question before we go to audience questions. The lack of public water in the Lower Village has long been an issue in attracting businesses to that area. What do you see as any potential solutions? Let's see. I believe it's Ellen first.
Yeah, this is the downside of living here for 30 years. Like, yeah. I think we absolutely, if one more person says, why don't we have decent restaurants here? All we have to say is water, right? So we're not going to get a townwide, septic system going, but Lower Village absolutely can do it. And I think we have, an incredible advocate in Senator Eldridge, who's already been asking about not only about what our plans are for Lower Village, but what grants do we need? What money do we need? What's our vision for it? And I think he's already been asking us, if this big infrastructure federal bill comes through, what are we going to have ready that we can apply for it? I think that's the kind of, this is, again, there hasn't been a lot of doers in the corner office at Town Building, and now we have a doer, and we have people who are really motivated. We have a terrific planning board and a planning board committee. I think there's a lot of interest in getting Lower Village going. The businesses are dying for it. We have an EDIC that's sort of nascent, but ready to help with new business planning down there. So I think it has to be a priority of the town in the next 10 years to start applying for those grants and get the money. And we had opportunities, lost some of them, still have some of them, to buy some land where we could sink wells, where we can create a water system down there. And it's absolutely critical for the economic health of Stowe, not to mention the social health, I think, of having a little bit more businesses that we can say are in our town, as opposed to going to Hudson and Maynard.
Thanks, Ellen. Zack, same question?
Yeah, I think Ellen's started that with the frustration level that I've heard about this project from many people. And so I just want to say, yes, I don't have much more to add than Ellen. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to say, I agree. It is part of our strategic plan. It is exactly the reason we have to start talking about what this master plan looks like, how we're going to take steps on that master plan, how we're going to ensure we have revitalization down there with great restaurants and ability for people to enjoy, as Ellen said, the social fabric of Stowe, which I think is also an incredibly important historical and future interest in Stowe. So I agree. I also think, as Ellen suggested, that our town administrator is doing a fantastic job trying to get things together and organized. And I think that we're at a turning point now with how long she's been here, that we can start to turn to the future and start to build and bring these questions that, as Ellen suggested, have been around for a very long time, start to bring them to the front, start to find solutions to them, and start to see how we as a collective town want to move this forward. And so at the end of the day, I hear your frustration on this, and I think that it's time that we start to put these into a plan, sit down together, and find a way that we're going to strategically move these forward.
Thank you, Zach. We'll take some live questions. Looks like, oh, I think we missed one from school. I don't see anything on Facebook. I don't see anything on YouTube.
Cyndy, if I might, can we take Abby's question and apply it to the select board?
Sure.
Just because I know this particularly is something near and dear to Zach's heart and what he's already been spending his time doing here. But I just, so the question was, she had asked it in terms of the school district, but how can we better support BIPOC and LGBTQ students, and I would say in the adults? And I think that this is one of these issues that, again, we have to find ways to make sure that people realize that they really are welcome here, no matter what their background, what color they are, what their experience has been, what their economic level is. And I think we do better in some areas than others. But I think I think one of the things a lot of us have learned over this past year, we have to be far more active about that invitation. It can't be a passive invitation. So I do want to talk more about what that is. And I want to give a shout out to our new police chief, Sieller, who really very proactively, even when he was still interim chief, was writing some really sort of groundbreaking policies around how we treat trans people. And that's not something, having worked with an organization that worked with trans individuals, that's not something you tend to hear from police departments. So I think that he's a great example of what Stowe can do. So I'll leave it to Zach to continue.
Thanks, Ellen. Zach?
Ellen, I couldn't agree more. And it's I think, one of the most important ways to do the right thing in town. I actually think that our town should take a step back and we need to start celebrating. We haven't had a pride parade in town. Why not? We have many LGBTQ folks in town. I'd love to celebrate. I'd love to celebrate my husband. I'd love to celebrate our family. I'd love to celebrate families like mine. I also think that at the end of the day, we have to be taking seriously what the future holds and how we do the right thing and show that our town led in some of the most critical questions that are confronting our world. I agree, Ellen. Chief Sieller, and I supported him, through the process. And I've worked with him on these policies. The transgender policy you suggested, we were able to work on through my association with NASJA. And it frankly was one of the most progressive policies I've seen with transgender folks that I haven't been able to actually see in other police departments I've worked with. And my background in policing, I think, yields itself where I've written a law review on this. It's been cited by the Delaware Commission on Civil Rights. I take the policing and the police reform process incredibly seriously. But I think that there's a great way for us to understand the tensions. And I think that we have the right person in the seat who also understands it, whose heart is in the right place, and who's going to help drive this forward for our town to do the right thing. And I think by these active processes, these active discussions, thinking about JEDI and working under, which is Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, underneath the town administrator, of how we're going to think about ensuring that we're having the best candidates apply to any job in town. And that also includes diversity candidates. We have to be taking this seriously. We have to move ourselves forward. And so at the end of the day, I think this is a fantastic question. I think it's also where our heart is as a board. And I think that the process that the board has put in place, the statements made by the town administrator over the last couple of events that we've seen, are reassuring and are demonstrating to anybody who wants to live in Stowe or who currently lives in Stowe or who wants to visit Stowe, knows where our town's values are and knows how much we love and support everybody who lives in town.
Thank you, Zach. All right. I don't see any additional questions, so we will move on now. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Again.
And we will move on to our last group of candidates. This is the only contested race that we have this election season. It started out, we had all sorts of contested races, and suddenly we're down to one. So here we are. Len Golder is, and this is the race for planning board. There is one open seat. Len Golder is the incumbent. Nancy Arsenault is challenging that incumbency, and we will take that on. We'll let Lenny go first as the incumbent, and then Nancy will get to you. Oh, you're muted, Len.
Oh.
There you are. Okay, you're on now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. As I indicated before, you know, my preference is to serve again on the planning board, and I gave this a lot of thought. I remember when I first decided to run for planning board about 15 years ago, a friend of mine in town said, "Planning board? That's a death sentence." Well, 15 years later, I'm still alive, and I see challenges coming forward in the next few years. They may be similar to what we've faced in the past, but to a greater extent, and that's why I want to continue to serve. You know, when you mentioned rural community, I think it's a desirable thing to keep a rural community. It doesn't mean you keep people out. In fact, anybody that knows me knows I'm very much in favor of inclusion, bringing new people in to living here, to serving on boards, but you don't throw old people out as well. You keep them as well. And you want to have a kind of housing that doesn't overdevelop. I've lived in Massachusetts my whole life, and I've seen towns that were rural in character and how they got ruined by overdevelopment. And that's something I don't want to see happen in Stowe. At the same time, I do want to see more small businesses come into town. I think it helps, first of all, the people who are living here, because they gives them some consumer choices that they can utilize in terms of services and goods. And at the same time, it reduces our reliance on the residential property tax. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we don't get major big businesses that are going to ruin our town, like big box retail. I've never seen that happening, frankly, as a threat. I don't think a Target is going to want to come to Stowe because we have a small consumer base. But what I do see coming on potentially on the horizon, given the shape of the new economy post-COVID, is possibly some kind of distribution type businesses. And that could make us a target because we're right near a major highway. And that's not the kind of development that I want to see in Stowe. The board that I've been serving on has done some things to help guide us in the future. We have a new bylaw, planned conservation development. What that means is if a developer comes in, we offer that if he or she gives at least 50% of the space to open space, they can kind of cluster the rest of the development, and that way we can preserve some open space. We're also currently working on trying to target different kinds of housing, encouraging developers to develop houses of different sizes, not just McMansions, but also smaller houses, so that people who have lived in town, grew up in town, will have a good starter opportunity to move in to a home here, to stay here. People who are living here who want to downsize will have an opportunity to live in a smaller housing situation. And also, as I say, another big challenge will be how do we navigate so that we don't end up with distribution type businesses. So with regard to that, again, I believe it's important, that we welcome new people serving on boards, but at the same time, don't throw out people who've had experience and institutional wisdom. And in that light, I hope I'm reelected, but if I am, I would welcome Nancy to serve as our associate member on the board. We do need good people, and I would be happy to nominate her if I'm successful to getting reelected on the planning board.
All right. Thank you, Lenny. All right. Next up, we have Nancy Arsenault, who is also running for the same seat. Nancy, take it away.
Okay, let me get my space here. Okay, well, rather than talk about what the planning board is doing, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm Nancy Arsenault. I've lived in Stowe 18 years. My husband and I have raised 4 kids, and now that our triplets are entering college in the fall, I thought this was a great time to get more involved. When the kids were 3 years old, I co-founded the Stowe Independent newspaper with Cyndy. And then for more than 10 years after that, I reported on town government, town meetings, public forums, public hearings, and literally hundreds of committee and board meetings, all that I attended in person. So while I have not served officially in an elected town government committee or board position, I do feel that I may have attended more meetings across the spectrum of town government over the last decade than maybe anybody else did, except maybe Bill Byron.
Bill Byron.
The planning board has always held the most interest for me, and I really believe that as the planning board goes, so goes the town of Stowe. The planning board has a say in if you get sidewalks in your neighborhood, if the style of the homes fit with the rural character we've all mentioned today. They can influence a builder to have price points that are more attractive to seniors or to first-time home buyers so that we can have a diversity of housing and home buyers in our town. They even give approval for the type of trees that get planted in your development. They're also permitting new and old businesses, and at the same time, they listen to residents who may think that those businesses are violating the permits. They're even overseeing road work and bridge projects right now. So the scope of work that the planning board does really affects every corner of life in Stowe and every age group of resident in Stowe. I think they have the most influence on everything in Stowe because they affect where we live. The work they do is very important, especially as they face the many new and large development projects that are coming along. And I'm really looking forward to starting that important work with them. And we've mentioned historical history. I think covering the planning board and other town committees for 10 years, I've seen where we've been, where we've gone, maybe some hiccups along the way. And I understand the bigger picture of where we'd like to be. So I'm looking forward to your questions and for getting your vote.
Thank you, Nance. All right. The first question, actually, I think, Len, you already answered. I will ask it again, but it can certainly be a brief response since you've already pretty much gone over it. Why did you choose to run for multiple offices? And if you win both, which would you choose?
I decided to run for 2 offices. I don't know if that calls for multiple. But I would choose planning board for the reasons I stated. I did decide to run for assessor as well because if the voters decide they didn't want me on the planning board, I felt that I could serve on the Board of Assessors since nobody else had stepped forward. And I do not want to see a situation where somebody gets elected to that position by just like a stealth write-in with 3 or 4 write-in votes. As I say, if I get reelected to the planning board, because I'm on the ballot for assessor, what will happen is somebody will have to step forward for an appointment to the Board of Assessors. So that'll be a public process. And again, I think that's that would be a better result than somebody getting elected on a stealth write-in for 3 or 4 write-in votes.
Okay, thank you, Len. Okay, and this is for both of you. Nancy, we'll start with you this time. What do you see as the priorities for the planning board looking ahead?
Okay, they are the main reasons that I've decided to run. We are looking at potential development of very large parcels in Stowe that really could change the entire look and feel of the town and reasons what we all live here and chose to live here. I think to have a planning board that is already proactively working with the developers and landowners to craft projects that fit many of the things we are looking to meet within our master plan, diversity of housing, open space, recreational opportunities. Most developers don't need to work with the town. They can do what they want just as these two, but I think there's a respect for the planning board here that will enable the town to have a project that we can live with that won't drastically change where we live. And I want to be part of that planning process to make sure that it's going to be something we all can live with. So the developments are one. Another thing is what's going to happen at Bose. There's several groups interested in it, from one to create like a distribution Amazon type warehouse. Another is sort of a senior living health facility. And there's a third one that I'm not sure what that is, but all of those would also have an impact on Stowe. And the planning board is working with those people too. So there's just so many things. There's, the lower village needs to look better. That's a big thing. And that's a planning board project. There's so much to do right now that I want to get going with.
Thank you, Nancy. Len, same question?
Okay, so I think the three major goals that I see is first, how to manage the housing development that's occurring in town. Stowe is no secret anymore like it was 30 years ago. This is a very desirable town. People want to move in, and that's nice, that we're a desirable town, but at the same time, it does create a challenge in terms of more people moving in. So managing that housing development so that we don't lose our rural character. And as I indicated, using the tools that we're developing on the planning board, the planned conservation development to encourage more open space within housing, encouraging more diversity of housing within these proposed developments. Those are, I think, are very important tools to dealing with the new housing development that we're facing as a major challenge. Second major challenge, encouraging more small businesses to move into town. Businesses that would be compatible with the kinds of consumer tastes and preferences that people in town would like. And the third challenge is to keep out things that we would find undesirable. And the main thing that I think would be undesirable would be an Amazon type distribution center. So again, these are the three major goals, managing the housing growth that we're facing, encouraging small business growth in town, and three, keeping out businesses like distribution centers that would be more out of character for the town.
Thank you, Len. Okay, next. And this we will start with Len. Do you think it makes sense to do the conservation restriction at Stowe Acres before there's a commitment to the North Course plan? Why or why not?
Well, sorry, I'm going to have to be careful here. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not somebody to be reluctant to give an opinion on anything. But on the planning board, we have a certain set of rules where we cannot comment on any pending matter that's going to come before us in a hearing. The reason being so that we can maintain some kind of objectivity when that issue comes before us. And this is something that will be coming before us. So I have to speak in generalities. I mean, I don't want to have to, avoid speaking entirely. As I've indicated, I think it's very important whenever we're dealing with a developer and a development to encourage as much open space as we possibly can to work in partnership. And this is something, a tool I think that's been very effective for many years. We actually used this tool, and I'll use another example. Years ago when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we faced the possibility of one of the apple orchards, Shelburne Farms, leaving, going out of business. And what we did was we worked with the developer and the owners of the apple orchard and the town to preserve the apple farm, really, but to allow some development. And it's this kind of mixed hybrid model that I think works very effectively. In fact, I'll add another one, a personal anecdote. Years ago, my grandfather had a farm in Millis, and when he was retiring and couldn't do farming anymore, he didn't want to see the whole farm just, go by the wayside. So he worked out an arrangement with one of my aunts where she could build a resort, but preserve some of the farm as well. So that's the kind of model I think we need to use whenever we're faced with this kind of a challenge.
Thank you, Len. Nancy, same question. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it makes sense to do the conservation restriction at Stowe Acres before there's a commitment to the North Course plan?
Well, I can't say I know enough about the big picture of this whole project yet. I know what was presented to the town a while back. I know there's a North Course plan where we would own 9 of the holes and lease them back to the golf course. And then there's the option that they develop that while the South Course is preserved. I think it's a multifaceted plan, and it seems like many steps rely on earlier steps to be completed. So I think we would need to understand the whole picture and the full commitment of the developer and landowner before the town puts money into it.
All right. Thank you. All right, Nancy, we're going to start with you this time. I'm going to go back to the same question that was brought up earlier to the selectmen, and I'm going to ask both of you the same question. They came in with a premise, and the first part of the question is, do you agree with the premise that there is a disconnect between the planning board, the building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer, all one person, and the Board of Health? Do you agree or disagree with that? And if you agree, sorry, this one got very complicated. How do you think the 3 entities can work together better?
Okay. I have been watching Zoom meetings, and I read 4 years of minutes recently. And I have an inkling as to which topic this question pertains to. And I have to say, as a viewer, I was a little concerned how long things do seem to drag out as each entity waits to hear the opinion of another on the same project. And yet the residents show up at meeting after meeting, waiting to see some progress or a development. So it appears to the uneducated eye that there is a disconnect, and yet I know these are all dedicated, hardworking people in these groups. Perhaps there just needs to be a come-together meeting on the one topic and see where everybody stands. It also sounds like the town is reluctant to pursue actual fines for a lot of violations, and perhaps we don't have a policy in place that they can follow to enact fines when they should be. And it does seem like it's something that should be looked at and would probably benefit all parties involved.
Thank you, Nancy. Len?
Yeah, actually, we do have a policy of fines, but the problem is the fines are very small. I think there's something like $300 a day. So it has some clout, but not as much as we would like. I'm looking at the big picture problem here, and it's one of a lack of cohesive action on the part of all the boards. Years ago, when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we used to have joint boards meetings on a regular basis, usually every 2 or 3 months. And that's how we could coordinate what the different boards were doing, and so we could work together better. And I think we really need to reinstitute that kind of policy. I mean, it's good to hear that senior managers of each of these different boards are meeting. That helps, but I think it has to go further down to the actual boards themselves so that we can come to a policy of unity. So we have had some issues. Again, I don't want to mention any specifics, but we have had some issues where we on the planning board have not been in sync, or I should say the various boards have not been in sync with us. That's my perspective. But however you want to look at it, we do need to work together in a more coordinated fashion. And I think having regular joint board meetings where we could come to some kind of a consensus of action would be very helpful. When we used to have joint board meetings, we would rotate as to which board would lead that meeting, depending upon what the issue was. So if there was an issue, for example, where we on the planning board are having some difficulty, we could, lead that joint board meeting and present the issue to the rest of the boards. And that could go for every board as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you both. And we have a couple of live questions. One, I believe, has been answered regarding the distribution facilities. What kind of distribution facilities are you concerned may want to come to Stowe? And I think we've heard that you were specifically looking at an Amazon type thing, looking into Bose.
Mhm.
Maura, I'm going to call you out on that one just to make sure that answers your question. If it doesn't and you want a follow-up, please go ahead and type it in and we'll get to it. Another question came in. What do you think can or should be done to expand affordable housing in Stowe? And we will start, I believe, with Nancy.
Just 1 second. Kids, out. I'm in the kids' remote classroom. I think we already do have some areas that have housing that has been preserved. I forget the exact word. I know on Elm Ridge, and then of course Pilot Grove and over at Villages at Stowe. I know that if any of these developers put in a 40B, there will be affordable housing there. I would love to see something where existing smaller homes, like say smaller ranches that are on White Pond Road or other places, could be bought and preserved as affordable housing, rather than us having to find a lot and build a house and all that maybe there's a way to do existing housing. I just don't know enough about it yet, but I know it's something we definitely need in Stowe. I also appreciate the plan that was created for Stowe Acres that is really focusing on affordable housing by creating cottage units and just smaller houses on smaller lots. We all don't need McMansions on multi-acre lots. So it would be great to have something where seniors could downsize. So I think we're trying to think of those options, and I believe the planning board is really open to any possibilities.
Thank you. Len, same question?
Yeah. We on the planning board realize that this is a major challenge because, frankly, let's be honest. If you took a poll, the majority of the people in town would say they were for affordable housing. But then if they were to get an affordable housing development next to them, I think you'd get a different result. There was a proposal to build affordable housing next door to me a couple of years ago. I supported it, and some of the other people in my neighborhood did as well. But the majority of the people in town saw it differently. So we're taking a different approach on the planning board. And one of the things we're working on is when there is a proposed housing development, to get the developer to focus on different kinds of housing. We're not going to call them affordable or non-affordable, but different sizes of houses. So some houses will be large houses, maybe some will be McMansions, some will be smaller houses, the kinds of houses that maybe somebody who grew up here in town could afford as a starter home, or somebody who's living here and wants to downsize could afford as a downsized house. So that's one thing. The other thing Nancy mentioned, and I think it's a good idea as well, is where there are specific houses that are up for sale, if they can be bought at a reasonable price and changed into something that's more financially affordable, that might be another approach. But I want to mention something else too. When we talk about housing and what's affordable, affordable under the state guidelines is $250,000. Now that may sound low by Stowe standards, but it's not people. You're not going to get somebody on welfare that's going to be able to afford a house that's for $250,000. Who's going to buy a house that's for $250,000? Be a teacher, a nurse, a social worker, maybe a building inspector. That's the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. I didn't grow up in a neighborhood with public housing. So when we talk about affordable housing, I think there needs to be an education about what affordable housing is. But rather than come up with some big project like was presented a few years ago, I think we have to take a different approach. We are going to be subject to housing developments, and when that happens, in addition to asking for open space, to get different sizes of houses. And I think that would be, something that would work in terms of getting houses that are a range of different prices.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, and I do not see any additional live questions for Planning Board. So at this point, we will have you guys close out with your concluding statements. Nancy, we'll start with you.
Okay, Lenny's been able to give a good background on a lot of planning board projects, which he should be able to do. He's been part of it a long time. But as I stated earlier, I have more than 10 years experience under my belt of attending meetings, asking questions as a reporter, and putting that information together in a way that residents can understand. I will put that same curiosity to work on the planning board. I will ask questions and get as much information as possible and suggest options and opportunities that may not have been considered before. And I'll make sure that no stone is left unturned that could affect the outcome of a project. These same skills that made me a good reporter will make me a worthy contributing member of the board. Attending all those meetings, I also saw mistakes and shortcomings of many who just saw the job of being a board or committee member as a hobby, or they pursued a personal agenda that kind of defeated progress. But I also saw long-standing town volunteers, many of whom have now passed, who really showed me what it meant to be a selfless volunteer for the town. I watched them fairly consider all options, make thoughtful comments, and never look for praise or personal reward. These people accomplish so much for Stowe, and I see them as the role models I will try to follow. My years covering town government gives me the historical knowledge of how we have gotten to where we are and where we would like to go in the future. I bring fresh energy, a fresh perspective to a veteran board. They're facing many intense projects right now, and perhaps some fresh energy will help us all get through it. I would really appreciate your vote on May 8th, as this is something I have really thought about and looked forward to for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, Len, close us out.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stowe. I thank Stowe TV for giving us all the opportunity to speak, and I think this has been a very good format. So I thank you for that. As I indicated, I served for 15 years on the board. I gave a lot of thought about whether I wanted to continue to serve, and what motivated me to want to continue is what I see coming in the future in terms of challenges that the town faces, particularly housing development and potentially some distribution type business, which I think would be a problem for the town. As I see this, this is where I want to be to help navigate and deal with some of these challenges. As I said, I've grown up in Massachusetts all my life. I've seen what happens when small towns no longer become small rural towns, and it's usually because of overdevelopment with too much housing. I'm glad to have been able to participate on the board to come up with some tools on how we can meet that challenge. I think we have to continue to come up with additional tools so that when there is housing development, we can shape that housing so that it doesn't ruin the small town feel that we all want, and why we moved here in the first place. Again, I want to emphasize that when I say a rural town, I'm not talking about keeping people out. And when I advocate for people like myself to be involved and volunteer our time, I'm not saying that new people shouldn't be on board as well. I think there's a value to both. I think there's a value to people who have experience and institutional wisdom. And I also think there's a value to bringing in new people with new energy and new blood. And as I say, in that context, I would very much appreciate your vote for me to stay on the planning board. And at the same time, if I am reelected, I would be happy to nominate Nancy to be an associate board member because she could also bring in that new energy that I know that she has as well. So thank you, and I'd appreciate your vote on May 8th, or before if you're voting mail-in.
All right, perfect segue, Lenny. Thank you. That leads us right to Linda Hathaway. Let me just double check that we have no more questions. I don't see anything. So we're going to segue right to Linda Hathaway, who is going to talk just exactly about that. What options, Linda, do we have this year? They changing. Oh, you're muted. Let's get you unmuted. There we go.
Again, this year we have vote by mail, and you would have received, every household got one of these Actions Unlimited. And inside are forms that you can fill out and get back to us. We've already received close to 200, and ballots will be are in-house, and we are getting everything labeled and mailed out. So if you want to vote by mail, get us the applications, drop them off at the drop box right here at the town building, and we will be mailing them out as soon as we get them entered and get everything processed. My suggestion to get them back to us is we have a drop box outside the front door where you can drop the ballots. It's blue. It's right on the sidewalk. And rather than mailing them, you can mail them, but just to expedite everything, get them into us as soon as possible. So the vote by mail deadline to get those applications into us is Tuesday, May 4th, because if we mail them on May 5th, they wouldn't get to you. So the vote by mail option, and also you can vote in person on election day. If anybody can come, you'll have to wear a mask. Will be social distancing. It'll be the same procedures that we did last year for the June annual town election, the primary, and the November election. So definitely, it's an option to come as well. If you forget about it and you don't think, get your application in on time. And but anyway, we've got lots of people volunteering to work the election and process all our ballots. And so we hope to see you at some point. The deadline for voter registration is this Friday at April 16th. The office will be open. We'll be here until 8 o'clock. So if people want to drop off voter registration forms, you can do that. You can also register to vote online. There's links on the town website on our homepage. And let's see. On election day, polls, it's Saturday. Polls are open 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So you can all make your way to the polls if you wish to. And then the last thing I want to remind the candidates, double check your forms, the dates to remember. Campaign finance stuff will be due in a couple of weeks. So if you have any questions, let us know. Anybody have any questions for me? Something I didn't answer?
Anybody out there? So Linda, there is no early voting.
No in-person early voting, no.
Okay. And I think that's probably the biggest difference this year.
Well, we did not have in-person for annual. It was basically at the state for the primary and for November.
Okay, right. Okay.
But it
so
wasn't for the annual.
Local. Gotcha.
Right, the
Okay.
local. Yep. And last year we did over 90% of our ballots. There were about 1,200 ballots cast. 90% of them were vote by mail. We had about 150 people show up at the polls this year.
Wow.
I think the turnout will be about 1,200, 1,300. That's what I'm expecting with just one contested race. People have to remember that we have two candidates in the selectmen's race, two candidates in the library trustees, but they're not contested. Mm-hmm. And we have two candidates running for assessors. One is a 3-year position and one is a 2-year position. So, okay.
All righty. Thank you so much, Linda.
Sure.
All right. Jonathan, I think, come on up. Just to bring you in to say, we forgot to practice. We didn't rehearse any kind of special goodbye. But I also did not turn anybody into a cat. So I am pretty happy with the way things went. And now we can't hear you. Let's unmute.
There you go. That's the last glitch.
The tech guy.
Yeah, I think it worked pretty well. I think everybody was heard.
Great. All right. So we are all set. If anyone else has any comments or questions, otherwise, I think we are good to go. And Jonathan, the recording of this night will be available when and where?
Well, it's going to be up on YouTube. It's going to stay there. It's up on Facebook. It'll stay there. And I haven't scheduled, well, I don't have a schedule yet, but it will also play repeatedly on our government channels, Comcast 9, Verizon 33, and I'll keep playing it until Election Day.
All right, great. So if anybody came in late or anybody was unable to attend and wants to share the links, just go to the Stowe TV YouTube site and the Stowe TV Facebook page, and you can share the recorded broadcast. All right. Thank you very much to all of the candidates. It's so important that people do step up into volunteer roles. It's the only way the government works in small towns. Otherwise, we don't have a small town government. So anybody who has taken their time and their energy and is willing to devote it to helping to run things, I give huge praise to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight, and we will see you at the polls. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you, Cyndy, for being the host.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Bye.